this one is not as cut and dry as I thought it was going to be. See, here's the thing. Obviously, you know because the title. I don't at this point. I don't know if I'm giving this one Rantview status or not. Because let me go ahead and just say it. It's either one additional point to the sub, and I don't give Rantview status, or I just give Rantview status. And it all boils down to one very simple question. Does the murder of this admittedly interesting premise warrant that I give the entire three-parter Rantview? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk this out, and we'll go from there. I'm going to start with just talking about the dub exclusively, because this is another, because admittedly, again, this is as you could probably tell from from my incredibly not so subtle, wording. Part one is the only holdout at this point, and if I was looking at strictly the dub, yeah, this would be a Rantview, no question, because it sucks. The dub of this episode sucks, But before I go any further, there's a question that I want to posit to you right now, before I say anything else. Do you buy a Tem activating the seal of Orichalcos? Now, sorry, that was actually, I just realized that the way I phrased that was terrible. Let me try that again. Do you find it believable that he would activate the seal of Orichalcos? Like, is that something you actually believe the character of a Tem, as he's been described, as he's been shown in the series? This is more so for the sub than anything. Do you think he is capable? Season 4 Tem is capable of activating the seal of Orichalcos, right? Keeping in mind that you have to take the last 155 episodes into account when you answer that question. Now, let me go ahead and say this as bluntly as I can. I don't. I don't think a Tem activating the seal of Orichalcos makes any sense. I never have, and I never will. That having been said, however, I do think that there is a way they could have made this work. But we'll get to that in the changes section. It's kind of a change to part 2 that I want to posit. Because in my changes section, part 1 has it only has a few of those few turns, and then we cut to round, insert whatever here. Whether we say it's 5, 7, 10, doesn't matter. But again, That's for later. Let's talk about the dub first. So in the dub, the biggest thing that Rafeal keeps going on and on and on and on and on about is the Pharoh is evil, the Pharoh is evil, the Pharoh is evil, the Pharoh is evil. The joke from Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged with this arc being written by somebody whose understanding of good and evil hasn't gotten out of kindergarten is easier to lob at the dub than it is to lob at the sub. Now, I still think you can once you actually peel back the layers and realize is that the animation of previous episodes and the revelations we're going to find out in I guess that would be about 20 something episodes. Like 23 episodes or whatever. Ever, the revelations that we find out about Darts and his role in the three backstories, which I guess I gave away when I talked about Imelda's backstory. Oops. But, regardless. Actually, did I give that away? No, I was only talking about the lie Dart said. So, I'm sorry, never mind. Forgive the spoiler I just spouted. Pretty much. There's more to these backstories than meets the eye. And not in a cool Transformers way. But anyways, but yeah, so Raphael's going on and on and on and on and on about evil, right? There is there is one bit of 4Kids failure that would have easily have pushed this episode, dipped this episode down into Rantviews status easily. As assuming the rest of the episode, was even if the rest of the episode was just kind of okay, but not that great. Kind of boring and shit. And then you will get the flawed premise. Well, the oomph would have been Raphael claiming that obey replacing cards in your deck makes you evil. No, seriously. He literally has a line of dialogue that says, in part 2, that says, as you abandon cards, the second stronger ones come into play. Because Raphael has never heard of power creep, apparently. I'm sorry, what? Power creep, real quick, for those that don't know, that aren't familiar with card game terms, is new cards come out and older cards become much more obsolete because the newer cards are stronger. Real life Yu-Gi-Oh has been suffering from this for decades at this point. Archetypes, it's kind of just steamrolled over a lot of earlier monsters. Synchros kind of started taking over the world because of how powerful they were. XCs were the exact same way. Hey, pendulums were out of fucking control in the Arc 5 era. And then, of course, Links, Links also were the same thing. Although, in defense of Links, of the Link monsters, yeah, that was because Konami fucked the pooch and literally rewrote the rulebook to be even fucking dumber than to be way dumber than it fucking should have. They literally changed Master Rule 4 was one of the worst Master Duels of all time because it effectively nuked NE Fusion, Synchro or Xyz, his archetype, just kneecapped them completely. When the only mechanic that should have been kneecapped at that point was Pendulum. Pendulum was the only mechanic that should have been kneecapped. But no, let's have power creep be in the fucking rule books instead of be a feature rather than a unfortunate consequence. If you ever wonder why I keep complaining about the whole, the meta of Yu-Gi-Oh is play these specific, this handful of decks or you're not competing, that's why. I can't claim to be very familiar with it, but from everything I have heard, Magic the Gathering mostly dodges this issue. I don't know how. Magic the Gathering fans, if you happen to be watching this, feel free to chime in and tell me, but yeah. Kind of fucking hate it, if I'm honest. So then Rafeal talks about his backstory, about how he was Green Arrow. Okay, I'm making a joke with that, but that's literally the premise of Green Arrow. Rich boy gets shipwrecked, hipped on an island, and for insert however many years, he has to literally stay on the island and train himself to survive. Yeah. Then in part 2, Rafeal talks about human sucking, blah 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 blah. This is dub Rafeal uh, for the record. He talks about human sucking, yada yada yada. He hands Atem the seal of Orichalcos through exchange, and then part 2 ends with Atem activating the seal. And because it suddenly turns him into a power-hungry douchebag, who will sacrifice everything on a whim out of fucking nowhere. We'll touch on that later. He loses. Yugi utilizes generates a fucking plot hole, sacks himself, and then we get the meme that most people use as the gooning meme. It should have been me, not him. It's not fair. Yeah. Fly me to the goon indeed. And again, two big things that fucking piss me off. Those are the three things that piss me off. Raphael's backstory is sad, but he uses it to justify wearing his cards through to the fucking bone. Now, in the sub, he mentions that he actually changes out the back, so it's only the front that is being worn out, admittedly. Like, essentially, the idea, effectively, think of it as Raphael is using card sleeves effectively. So they're not marked. He literally mentions that that the reason why he changes out the backs, like he swaps in fresh backs, is so that the cards aren't marked, right? But at that point, you could literally just go to like, I'm sure you could go to Pegasus, throw a bit of money at him, and bam, your Guardian cards would just be, have new things. Like, you could even recycle the materials, so it's not you're abandoning them, you're just literally giving them a fresh set of, fresh clothes, right? You know. Or do like Yugi does and put, the actual ones that you like, have the ones that's actually, the copies that saved your life, they quote unquote saved your life, and, on you at all times in like a protective case or whatever, like a keepsake, like, and then just have, your regular cards. Like, I'm sorry, but the premise sounds good on paper, but I still feel like once you actually start actually trying to put it into practice and tell a story with it, it doesn't work. Especially with how bad the writing in the dub is. Right? So it sucks. I also don't like the Duel very much. Though, admittedly, there is some actual good back and forth. Admittedly, this is actually a really good Duel. There's some interesting stuff. I like Curry Babylon as a monster, for example. The Karibo brothers are cute. I do like that in the sub, Rafeal actually comments the Karibo brothers. He's like, "Aw, I got stopped by those 5 cute little fuzzballs. Cool." Cool. Like he's got this big smile of like, "Oh, this cute monster saved you. Awesome." Like he's happy. He's got this like beaming smile, and it's not this more, and it doesn't look like a sinister like I've won exactly as planned kind of sinister grin. It's more of a, "Oh, that's awesome. That's actually awesome. Cool." And I kind of like that. I wish it was in a better episode. There is one thing I will give there's to touch on the dub. For the last point I will touch on with the dub, I do think the anguish after Atem loses, when Yugi sacks himself, health, works better. The scream of anguish at the end, and works better. Again, because the dub's version is so easily turned into a meme. You know. Also, Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight is probably the best monster to come out of, well, any of this, honestly. Other than maybe Mirror Force Dragon, but we haven't even encountered that one yet. And we won't until literally the final duel of the entire arc. Slash Cry. So, I guess let's talk out part 1 in the sub now. And see if it pulls this 3-parter out of Rantview. So, the episode begins. Rafeal destroys the bridge because drama, I guess. That was stupid. As was the whole thing with Duke's car in the desert. That was dumb too. Just everything about Duke and the boys trying to get to the duel site, it is dumb. I actually think Rex and Weevil being there is less dumb. That's how much I hate that. But but Rafeal effectively says that this is effectively a battle of beliefs. We've both been set on a specific path by destiny. Which of our destinies is correct? He literally has a line that asks the question, is Doma truly evil? Is Doma evil? That's for history to determine. Which is good. Which is good writing. Because if you think about it, it's true. If Light Yagami as Kira wins and takes over the world, then he's justice. Justice. If he's caught and executed, then he'll just go down in history as a deranged serial killer. After all, history is written by the victor. If Doma wins, then Doma is justice. If Doma is defeated, then Doma was just an evil cult. And considering that Doma is not present in any future Yu-Gi-Oh show, I think we all know what history had to say about that. I also kind of like how Rafeal speaks with such respect in the sub. When he says to Atem, you do not know, you do not know the pain of loneliness like I have experienced. He's saying it almost like he's lamenting it. Like it's a lamentation that Atem cannot understand him on a personal level, cannot, fully empathize with him on a personal level because he hasn't gone through the same stuff Rafeal has. Now, I know you don't have to go through exactly the same idea to understand, oh shit, that was horrible. You being on an island for 3 fucking years, and then you come back, and then your relatives are a bunch of fucking greedy assholes who literally steal all of your money, all of the money from your inheritance and fuck off with it, leaving you with jack shit. And they pretend to be kind by taking you but then they just fucking use and abuse you. Yeah, no, it's completely understandable. In the dub, he talks about how he's superior because he suffered through all this crap and humanity sucks because, as I've seen the ugliness of the world, blah, 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 right? In the sub, it's more of just I believe humanity is full of darkness. Here's why. In the dub, it's humans suck, the end, fuck off. Now, in the sub, it is effectively the same thing. It's kind of it is black and white bullshit. It is a human suck plot, but there's actual like nuance and layers. This is why I say part 1 is the giant question mark. The sub of part 1 is this giant fucking question mark because it's the explanation of his backstory is better. It's darker on top of that because they literally say before the flashback begins that, yeah, no, Raphael's family is frickety dead. His siblings and his parents are frickin' dead. In the sub, Raphael literally has a line that says, "Oh yeah, they got off the island. They basically abandoned me, but they got off the boat." Which is darker when you think about it. And he effectively, and he, although I will say it is still pretty dumb that he's like, yeah, I'm gonna defeat you without the seal, right? Because his plan is to have Atem activate the seal. Yeah, I'm still undecided. Let's keep going. Let's talk about part 2. And the sub of part 2, and we'll go through it, right? excuse me. I'll cover the duel and that final moment of the duel last. I'll cover the duel all in one nice big little chunk. Save for the obvious, but well, no, we'll save the obvious for that too. So, like I said, Rafeal compliments the Karibos. That was nice. Atem brings out Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight. And then Rafeal explains what Doma wants to do. Reset history. Level it all to the ground. And then start over. He might as well be saying, I will destroy Spira. I will save Spira. It's a fucking Final Fantasy villain plot. It's literally burn the fucking world so you can start over plot. AKA most of the Final Fantasy plots. Like, come on. Ugh. Humans all fucking suck and they all need to die. Fuck this black and white bullshit. Not helped by as I said earlier, the animation in previous episodes and the revelations we're going to be seeing in A Duel with Darts. There's fuck this premise. Premise in the ass. Or as I put it in my notes, murder this good idea. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to save that for when I talk about the duel. Also, when the activation happens, at the beginning of part 3, Rafeal in the sub admits that he's a prick, by saying that he tricked him. Atem suddenly turns into a fucking dick with his strategy, which is just, what the hell. And then after Atem loses, in the sub, Rafeal says that he's going to duel Jinochi next. What? I'm sorry, what? I thought that was what Valen wanted to do. Well, then again, I suppose all Valen wants to do is stick his dick in Mai, so never mind, I guess. Yes, I guess Valen's just too busy thinking with his penis to actually be a character. And yes, I am going to keep fucking saying that, because Valen is not a character. He's a dick. Or at the very least, he thinks with his. And then, of course, we either get, depending on which version you're watching, you either get the scream of anguish, which is awesome, or the meme, which is stupid. So let's rewind to the duel now, shall we? So, Backup Gardna is actually a very interesting monster. It blocks Chimera, which is actually really cool. Also, not a real card. That's another thing that kind of screws this duel over quite a bit. There are so many cards in this thing that are not actual, like, don't have OCG, TCG counterparts. So, yeah, again, this is a plot duel. Let's just be real. So, the Guardian cards, okay, I should also mention the Guardian cards suck in the real card game, because you have to equip a monster on your field with their specific equip card, and then you can bring them out. And the only one that actually has any decent attack points, if you have Backup Gardner on the field, by the way, is Guardian Grawl, because if you get him on the field and use Backup Gardner's effect, which isn't even explained in the dub, by the way, if you use Backup Gardner's effect to put the axe on Grawl, he's got 3,000 attack. Cool! That doesn't mean anything. Also, fun fact, I am pretty sure there are 2 Guardians we never see in the entire in the entirety, in either this or the next duel. That being Bow and Trice. I could be wrong about that, but yeah. So then 5-star Twilight is used to bring out the Kuribo brothers. Others, which then they combine to become Curry Babylon. Rafeal attempts to deal some massive damage. He's actually kind of cool in the sub about it. It's still dumb, but there it is. Then there's the abandonment fallacy. Blah blah blah. Humans suck. Blah blah. Then Rafeal uses exchange when they both only have one card in their hand, and which hands Rafeal necromancy and hands Atem the seal of Orichalcos. And this is where we go back to my note from the sub that the premise of the activation ruins everything. Because there is one point I have not touched on yet that I am adamant at being a thing. Okay? You ready for this? Before Atem activates the seal of Orichalcos, what are the stakes? Now, I know the counter argument. I can already hear it. Oh, Blue Wolf, the Orichalcos stone was tempting him and afflicting him. All right. You know how you make this better? You show other people being tempted by the stone before this. No, seriously, think about it for a second. Have other people take hold of the stone. Have Imelda, for example. Say, like, let's say, like, this is also why only 3 Doma duelists, well, 4 if you count what they did to Mai, sucks. Actually, 5 because of Garimo. I think that all three should have had a Doma, companion. If you want to fuck Mai over, you can keep Mai as Valen's. Garimo works as Rafeal's. Have a random one duel Kaiba, and that gets him to show up. And then so Kaiba shows up, so have Kaiba show up, defeat the goon. Imelda then calls up as Pegasus, like, oh, hey, did you enjoy the duel with your friend? I'm going to challenge you. If you don't, I'll just keep buying up your company. Ben basically continued the thing. It's just during the duel, once he switches over to being actually Imelda, do the exchange play. Do the same thing Rafeal does, because then it's a contrast. Kaiba is tempted, and it fails. Atem is tempted, and he caves. Think about it for a second. I think this would have worked better if you had also had like 2 or 3 goons from Rafeal sends 2 or 3 goons before dueling Atem himself, but shrug. But yeah, no. In my blunt opinion, there are no stakes. And again, if you want to say that the Orichalcos was tempting him, let's establish that it can do that instead. And you know how you do that? You don't even need to change anything about this episode. Just establish it, whispering in Kaiba's ear that he promptly ignores. Think about it and then think about it this way. The Orichalcos won't help him. He even tosses it away like, fuck off. I don't need your bullshit. I don't need your charity. And then Critias shows up. Right? Kaiba rejects the power of the Orichalcos and is rewarded. Atem accepts the power of the Orichalcos and is punished. Hell, it even fits with their signature monster's attributes, doesn't it? Because Blue Eyes White Dragon is a light dragon. Yeah. And then Iato shows up. And then Iato shows up after Monster Reincarnation gets Gruul out of Rafeal's graveyard. I agree with Joey that Atem is brainwashed at this point, because this is out of character for Atem. Then Guardian Iato shows up, absorbs the power of the monsters in Atem's grave, blasts Catapult Turtle, and that's it for the duel. I do prefer him begging for forgiveness from his monsters in the dub, as opposed to "Don't look at me" in the sub. But then again, I don't see Atem as being egotistical like some people do. So whatever. So while it wasn't as clear cut and dry, the cut is my sister going by and me jotting it down. Yeah, I think I'm gonna still give this one Rantview. It wasn't as cut and dry because again, part 1 is actually really good, but no. The rest of the rest of this 3-parter, the premise, and Atem suddenly turning into a turning into a douchebag out of fucking nowhere and sacking his monsters left, right, and center, which is a strategy he literally shifts to the second he activates the fucking thing, if you noticed. No, doesn't work. I don't like it. I don't like it, and I don't buy it. So, how would I change this episode? Let's see if I can change it without actually changing the rest of the arc. All right, give me a moment. Let me think about this for a second, okay? Let me think about this. I can put my notes away because I am done with them now. How to fix this episode without changing it? That is a good question. See, this is why I do these changes section for these rant views, because then I can actually get my brain thinking, especially in an episode where the premise is fucking stupid, right? It's actually one of the reasons why I actually liked it doing it with the Rebecca 2-parter, despite how much I was yelling and screaming and raging at that episode. This one does piss me off, but it's kind of more of a quieter rage, mostly because of how much it just squanders the premise. I think what I would do with this episode is I would have Rafeal have a card that forces Atem to activate the Seal of Orichalcos. Take the agency of activating the Seal of Orichalcos right out of Atem's hands, and then all of a sudden, now you have something. Now, You might think, well, wait, doesn't that kind of prove that Rafeal is the evil one because he forced the darkness on Natem? You could interpret it that way. Or you could interpret it as you are not getting out of this, Pharoh. I will find out what color your frickin' soul is. Have it be a determination thing. Have it be that Rafeal it feels like he has to force the issue because he has to know. And then you have a Tem. Yeah, and you basically do the Colonel Richard thing from Trails. I mentioned Trails just a couple of weeks ago. You do the Colonel Richard thing from Trails. Everybody's like, "Oh, Rafeal forced you to play that card. It's out of your hands." Hands, Yugi. No, it fucking isn't. The Orichalcos fed on my darkness. The only reason I turned into a puppy strangling maniac in that duel is because I actually had that level of darkness inside of me. I did this. I fucked up, and now Yugi's paying the price for my fuck up. Because now, instead of it being a boneheaded decision of, well, then why the fuck did you play that card in the first place? It's a Rafeal forced the issue. He had to move on with it. And that sweeps all of the other issues out of the rug. Hell, it even makes the whole frickin' spirit quest that he's going to go on in about 4 episodes actually make a large degree of sense. And even feels like it would be necessary. Because then he has to face his darkness, face his mistake, and atone for what he feels he has done. Hell, you can even make it what they did with the 2003 Ninja Turtles series. If there was nothing more you could have done, then why do you torture yourself so? And have that be the revelation that makes a Tem go, oh. But it was still my darkness, yes. And you can either wallow in your despair, or you can go get your Aibo back. Pick, Pharoh. That's what I would have done. Because then you get the same aim, force him to face his inner darkness thing without it looking like an egotistical fuck, which he has not been portrayed as up to this point. My opinion. What do you think? That's Fate of the Pharoh. I ended up giving this thing Rantviews status. Wasn't as cut and dry of a Rantviews status as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, that is, for all intents and purposes, my last intended DM rant view. Fun fact. I can't think of a single other episode that I think would actually gain rant view status. And that, although I will admit that's mostly because of the fact that, well, actually, no. It's because I'm not doing the KC Grand Prix in one video, and yeah, there's a specific 2-parter that I kind of that would yank it right out of Rantview status because of how fucking awesome it is. You know? Specifically when Kaiba successfully rides out the storm that is the Valkyrie deck. But that's not for a good long while because, again, we've still got... Fuck, what is it? We've still got how many episodes left? We've still got 26 episodes left after this arc. Yeah, we're not even at the halfway point yet. Yet this feels like this should be the end of the first half of the arc. Huh. I mean, granted, we're gonna have a 5-parter and a 6-parter, respectfully later, so, but regardless, yeah. Fate of the Pharoh. Didn't fill me with as much rage as I thought, but I think at the end of the day, I am going to give it a rant view, just because the good stuff in part 1 is destroyed by the rest of it. My opinion. That close. It came that close to being yanked out of rant view status. But the thirst for battle wasn't as strong with this one. How's that for irony? Seto is better than Rafeal. My opinion. Until next time, this is Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. Duel stand by.